Okay, so we're on Chapter 8, SAM Project 1A. This is working with pivot tables, which is one of my favorite things about Microsoft Excel. A little difficult to grasp at first, but stick with it because it's an amazing tool. Alright, so as usual, make sure you rename your Excel file _2 before you submit it, so you don't have any problems. And in our project description, basically it's telling us that there's a regional sales manager that wants us to create a worksheet that details guitar sales by region so that it's easier for them to analyze the data. So let's get started. So step number 1 says go to 2013-16 guitar sales chart worksheet. So let's go here. And it says remove the 4-year sales average field from the pivot chart. So we can see the pivot chart fields list here. We can see that it says 4-year average. It's part of one of our things. So we just want to uncheck that button right there, and it removes that. We click on it and it comes back in, but we don't want it. So moving on to number 2. It says format the pivot chart title using the gradient fill orange accent 4 outline accent 4 word art style. So this is our chart title, so we just click here to select it, and then I believe it's going to be in format. We have our word art styles, and it says orange, so it says white. Orange, accent color 4, outline orange, accent. Okay, so this is our thing. I'm just going to click on that. Okay, so number 3, format the pivot chart described below. Change the data series format to cylinder. Alright, so to do that, we're going to click on one of these until we get our blue dots. Right click, format data series. And it brings up this extra field here, okay? And it says we're going to change it to cylinder. Now, you can see that blue changed, which means we need to click on yellow, change yellow, click on green, and change green, and then orange, and change it to cylinder. And then we can X out of that. We'll leave the pivot chart fields thing open for now. It says change the fill of the back and side walls of the chart to gradient fill using from center option. Okay, it says depending on the existing formatting of the back and side walls of the chart, you may be available in the light section of the gradient. So we're going to click in here, just right click, see where it says walls. There's a drop down that says back wall and side wall, but in this case we can stick with just walls. Alright, and we're going to go to our fill, and down here we have a gradient that we can fill with, okay? And we just need to find center, which from center, and click that. You can see that it's created a blue gradient across and done the gradient on the side here, okay? And if you're interested if this is correct, you can always scroll down and take a look and see that this looks just like that. So we're right on track here. So let's scroll back up. So we are on number 4. It says go to the 2016 guitar sales worksheet. So let's go to the guitar sales. Let me scroll over here. Guitar sales worksheet and select cell B4. So I'm just going to click in B4. It says create a new worksheet and then create a blank pivot table report in the new worksheet. Hint, the pivot table report should be based on the table guitar sales 2016. Well, that's what this is, okay? An easier way to do this, instead of creating a new sheet and then creating a blank pivot table and then doing that, is to click in the data that you want, go to Insert, and click on Pivot Table. Now, you can see that it's selected Guitar Sales 2016 as data, and it says New Worksheet. Click OK. We now have a new blank pivot table based off of the data in that sheet. Alright, off of 2016 Guitar Sales. Remember, every new sheet we create is in front of the one we were working on. It says change the name of the worksheet to Electric Pivot Table Report. So I'm just going to copy this and rename that. Now, you notice I click out and I lost my menu. To get back to my menu for the pivot table, all I got to do is click in this little box here. So it doesn't matter if I lose it, just click on the pivot table and you get your pivot table information back. So B says add the model and customer fields in that order to the rows area. So you can see we got 4 little rows. All right, 4 little drag fields. Okay, so it says model. So I'm just going to click on model. I got my 4-way arrows, which means I can move it. I'm just going to drop it here. And customer. So I'm going to grab customer and put them here. And as you can see, when I add this, it takes information from this worksheet and filters it. Okay? And in this case, it's filtered off the model of the guitar and then the customer that's actually purchased it or has inventory. So the next C says add quantity and total amounts in that order to the values area. All right, so we want quantity and total amount to our values area. All right, and it says the field should be changed to sum of quantity and sum of total, and they are. You can see it says sum of quantity and sum of total. D, apply the currency number format with 0 decimal places to the sum of total. So we can grab all this, come over to our Home tab, and in our General drop-down here, we're going to select Currency and just delete the decimals. The other way that you can do this is you can click on this. It brings up a main menu. You can click Currency and type in 0 and OK. Either way works. Now it says add the type field to the filters area of the pivot table field task pane. Okay, so I'm going to click back in here to get my pivot table field, and it says I'm taking the type and moving that to filters, and we can see that it comes up here. All right, and then use the filter to display only records for electric guitars. This is why pivot tables are amazing, because now I can come and say I only want to see electric guitars, click OK, and there you go. Only the data for electric guitars is shown. Alright, now it says return to the 2016 guitar sales worksheet. So this was the worksheet we were working on. Create a pivot chart directly from the data. Rename the worksheet quantity sold report. Alright, so I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to click in B4, insert, pivot table. It's got everything I need. Click OK. And now I'm going to rename this sheet, the worksheet quantity sold report. And A says add the type field to the legend. Oh, excuse me. This says pivot chart. My apologies. I created a pivot table. So let me delete this. Come in here, insert, and now instead of the pivot table, I'm selecting a pivot chart right over here in our charts. Okay, you can see we have a pivot table pivot chart, the pivot chart selected. So let me name this quantity sold report. So it says add the type field to the legend series. And you can see this is different. Okay, we got different things here because it's working with a chart. So I'm going to add type to the legend. All right, and it's going to show up over here. It starts giving me a pivot table. This is the chart that will be associated with this. Okay, so as we change these parameters, the chart will change with it. All right, B says add the customer field to the access category. So grab customer, add to access. Now we see that our chart is starting to move him, so it's easier to see here. You can see that our chart is starting to grow. C, add the quantity field to the values area. So quantity to the values. Now we're starting to get more data and more data up here. Okay. says change the title of this field to quantity sold in 2016. Okay, so right here it says sum of quantity. There's a few ways we can do this. Okay, you can see that the value is listed down here. There's a little button. If I click here, this is value field settings. If I right click here, I get value field settings. Sum of quantity is that same thing. So if I were to rename this, it should essentially do the same thing. But let's focus on this. I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to right click and go to value field settings. Okay, and instead of it saying sum of quantity, it needs to say quantity sold in 2016. Now, click OK. You can see that quantity sold in 2016 is changed here, it's changed here, and it's changed here. That means that if I back up Control Z and I clicked here and I just deleted this and I changed it here and hit enter, it changed it as well. Okay, so any of the three places that will happen. All right. So it says select row 1 and insert 2 new rows into the workbook. So selecting a row is moving over one of the row numbers until you get your arrow, and left clicking, which selects an entire row. And then you can do this a few ways. You can right click and click insert. The easier way in this case is to just come up to the insert and hit that twice. There we go, 2 rows. All right, now it says in cell A1, enter the text Precision Instrument Manufacturing. So let me copy that. Now I'm going to click in here, but I'm not going to paste it here. I'll just paste it here, and I'll show you why. If I hit enter, I get this. If I back up and I paste here, I get the formatting that came from here. Most of the time it's not worthwhile to keep the formatting, so I just put the information here and hit enter. And then it says apply this title cell style to the text. All right, so click here, we go to our cell style, choose title, great. Now it says in A2, all right, so we got more information we need to add. Go to A2, add our text. Then it says title cell, so again, we just go back and do the same thing, add title. All right, looking good here. G says move and resize the pivot chart so that the top left corner appears in cell A14. So this is our pivot chart. So he needs to be in A14, so let's move him here. And the bottom is going to be in E33. So if I go down to 33, come across to E. There we go. All right, on to number 6. It says go to the customer pivot table report worksheet. So I might have to move over here. Customer pivot table report worksheet. Yes. Okay, it says refresh the pivot table. It says report data. Hint, after refreshing the pivot table, the total in 2016 sales value for Ace Guitar should be $71.58. So it's saying that this data will change. Okay, so we can click anywhere, it doesn't matter, anywhere in this field, and we have a couple of pivot table tools that come up, analyze and design. So design is what you would think. You're going to change kind of the looks and some of the things that happen. Analyze is where a lot of the information that you can add or edit shows up. So over here, there's a little thing that says pivot table, and we have some options down here as well. So just so you know that there are a few things, whenever you see these down arrows, you can see refresh, refresh all. So we just need to click the refresh button here. And it says 71.58 now, which is perfect. Okay, so we've completed step 6. Now it says apply the pivot style medium 13 to the pivot table. So we're going to go to our design. And it says medium 13. So I'm going to click on my little drop down here. We see light, medium, and dark. So medium, and this is 12. This is medium 13. So I'm going to click medium 13. 8. Modify the sum of order number field in column B as described below. This is this field right here. Okay? So that field right there. Summarize the values in the column using the count function. Alright. So what we want to focus on here is changing how this actually works. So, sum of order. And if we go to this little drop down here, and we click on value field settings, you can see that not only do we have the name, but we have the summarized values using the count function. So if you see that this says sum, and we have 1275, once we change it to count, we get 50. Okay? So it's the count of orders, not the sum of the orders. So in this instance, they made 7 orders, but the count of orders could be the number of items within the order. Alright, it says change the name of the field change the name of the field to total 2016 orders. So instead of clicking anywhere else, I'm just going to click here. Okay. We can see that it changed here, and it also changed down here. Okay. Alright, so we're on to number 9. It says modify the number format of the total 2016 sales field. So if I click here and hover above it, and I get my little down arrow, I can click and it'll select the whole field. So it says currency number format with 0. So let me show you the other way to do currency. Instead of coming here and selecting from here, I'm going to use the drop down, click on currency, change that to 0, and OK. And that's all done. 10. Add a new calculated field to the end of the pivot table report as described below. So we want to click here on our 2016 sales right at the top. And we're going to come up to our Analyze button. All right. And there's a little drop down here that says Fields, Items, and Sets. And our first option is Calculated Field, so we're going to click on that. Now, it says enter the text income per guitar. So let me, I'm just going to highlight it. So the field name is going to be income per guitar. The formula is total amount divided by quantity. So this is our formula. I'm just going to delete this. Scroll down. Total amount, double click, divided by, double click quantity. There we go. So we have our formula. And it says apply the current. Okay, so in this case, we're good. We're going to click add. Okay. Now we see that once we do that, we have our sum of income per guitar. Now it says apply the number currency. So again, I'm just going to click here, hover up over the top of it, go back, and do currency, no decimals. And D says change the name of the field to average income per guitar sold. So, and there we go. Now, it isn't wide enough, so I should probably just double click in between here and open it up so you see the whole name. Alright. So, number 11 says go to the model pivot table report. That's our next page here. And it says make the following updates. Now, this little thing over here is called a slicer. We'll get to use these and you'll figure out what it is very quickly. Right now, they're all selected. But what you can do is, if you click on one, it just selects just one of them. So we can see by whoever it is what's going on at each one of these different things based off of the different models that we sell and how many orders and stuff like that. We remove that and get everything back to start by just clicking on the remove filter. We can also click on multiple by just holding down the control button and clicking on a few, okay? Alright, so it says go to the model pivot table report worksheet and make the following updates. Change the layout of the pivot table report to the compact view. Okay, so clicking on this, we want to come up to our Analyze, and I believe it's under Options, is it? No. Design. My apologies. So on the Design tab, it's under Report Layout. It says Show in Compact Form. So that changes the view. I should have known that view design. Okay, so B says hide the field headers in the pivot table report. So field headers is actually, even though it's a viewed option here, it's in the Analyze tab, and it's over here on the Show area. You can see it says field headers. So if we look over here, watch what happens when I check that off. You can see that this row labels, column labels, goes away. Alright? Those are called field headers because they are options that you can drop down and edit the field below. Alright? So we'll get rid of those. C says update the pivot table options to turn off auto fitting of the column widths. Alright. So this is probably in our options. And it is. It's right down here. Auto fit column widths to update. Alright. So all I did was click there, click on the drop down, go to options, and then uncheck that button. That's all I did to get that done. Alright, so it says number 12, format the customer slicer using the slicer style light 5. So I'm just going to click on the slicer and select it, which gets rid of the pivot table menu, and we get a slicer tool option. So I'm going to go here, and it's light 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It says light 5. Oh, it's got light and dark, so light 5. Just click that. There we go. Then use the slicer to filter the pivot table report to only display data for Jackson Music School. So I'm going to click on Jackson Music School. Patriots Hill Music. So I'm going to hold Control, click Patriot Hill Music, let go, and it shows. And Westwood Music. So I'm going to hold Control, click Westwood, let go, and you can see that those are the only 3 highlighted and the only 3 that show up on our pivot table now. Alright, now it says add another slicer to the model pivot table report based on the type field. So if I click on our pivot table report and come up to our Analyze button, we can, under Filter, insert a slicer. Just click Insert Slicer. So based off of type. So we want it off of type. Okay. Here it is. So this is our new one. We can do acoustic, electric, and electric guitars. So 13A, resize and reposition the type slicer top left in P18. So P18, so that's where the top left is. And then it says bottom right in R24. So I'm going to grab this and that's 24, that's R. So it's in, you can see that this is row 24, the bottom of it's in R24, okay? Format it using Slicer Light 5, that's easy because we just did that. Options, it's this one. And it says use the slicer to filter the pivot table report to display data for acoustic and electric guitars. Alright, so I'm going to click acoustic, which is going to do that, and then Control, click electric, let go, and now we have our report. Alright, on to number 14. go to the 2013-2017 sales forecast worksheet. That's this sheet right here. Create a line with markers chart based on the non-adjacent ranges of A3 to F3 and A7 to F7. Okay, so I'm going to select A3 to F3, hold Control, and choose A7 to F7, and let go. And then it says I'm going to create a line with markers chart. So insert, we're going to our chart. This is a line chart, so drop down, and line with markers. Okay, that's the chart we want. Now what does it say here? So move and resize the chart so that the top left corner is in cell A9. So this is cell A9. And the bottom right corner is in cell F21. So we have to actually make this one smaller. So we can see that 21 is here. F is there, so we're in a good spot here. All right. Let's move on. It says, format the line with markers chart as described below. Change the title of the chart to guitar sales actual and forecast. Okay. So to change the title, I'm going to click on the title and select it, and I'm going to start typing up here. I want to show you something. I mean, you can just paste it, but sometimes, because it's actually, you want this information that's already written, sometimes it will actually populate for you, but it's not going to today. And then just hit enter. All right. B, set the minimum bounds for the vertical axis to 20,000. So this is our vertical axis. All right. This, I just need to click on one of the numbers to get the box around here, and then double click on one of the numbers, and we get this format access dialog box. Okay. And it says we're setting the minimum right here to 20,000. Now, if I hit enter, you can see that it goes now from 20,000 to 90,000. I can X out of this. C says set a primary vertical axis to the chart. So with the chart selected, I just add primary vertical. I don't need to click anywhere. You can see the axis title is already selected, so I can just paste what I've already grabbed. By clicking in here and pasting what I want and hitting enter. Okay? Very easy. Now it says primary horizontal axis. Alright, so it's still selected. Alright, I want to go to design, primary horizontal, and type in dollar or year. Hit enter, and you can see that on the bottom we have year. E says select the 2017 data point on the chart. Okay, so I'm just going to click here and click a second time to just select this one data point, and then right click and format data point. Alright, now it gives us this menu, and we're going to have to look over onto our fill and line options, because what it's doing is saying change the size of the marker to 8. Well, right here on the line, I need to click on marker, and the only thing we have here is this, so I'm going to make that 8. And then it says fill the color to red accent 6. So this is the color, and this is red accent 6. Okay. Now if I click out here, I can close this, and we can see that this giant dot at the end. Okay. Step 16 says go to the acoustic electric trend line. All right. Add a linear trend line to the chart with the following options. Trend line forecast at 2 periods forward and display the R value. Okay. So I believe we're going to right click on the line itself. Okay, so I'm selecting the line and then right clicking, and it sees we have an option here, add trend line. So I'm going to click that. Now it says it's linear. Well, we got a linear trend line, perfect. And then set the trend line to forecast 2 periods forward. So under forecast, we are going to make this 2. And then it says display the R value. So I'm going to click R value. And this is what we have. Okay? And if you want to see if anything you have done is correct or not, you can always go down to the bottom where it shows you what everything should look like. So in a lot of these things that we've built, you can see that this very much mimics what we just went through. And if we look at the very last option, like, no, looks exactly the same. And that looks just like the one we just did. Thank you very much, and I hope you guys had a great week.